I now give the floor to the representative of the Observer State of Palestine.
Thank you, Madam President, and allow me also to thank Assistant Secretary General Khayari for his briefing on the report of the Secretary General on the implementation, or rather on the breach and the continuous breach of Resolution 2334. This report shows two important things. The first one is that the killing and the mass displacement of Palestinians is also ongoing in the West Bank, as well as decolonization and annexation of Palestinian land. Second, it shows the price of not holding those who breach the resolutions of this Council accountable, and how that allows for the perpetuation of crimes and illegal actions to this day. There's a condemnation of settlements that has been going on now for 60 years, and the settlement activities continue to this day because of that lack of accountability. Allow me to start by saying there is a consensus around the need for a ceasefire, the release of hostages and prisoners, the delivery of humanitarian aid, and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. But what happens in the meantime, while the mediation of efforts of the United States, of Qatar, of Egypt continue? We reject the idea that there is a right to slaughter Palestinians. That was our position from day one. This is day 632, and the slaughter is ongoing. There is nothing that can justify a genocide. A nation is fighting for its survival, faced with an existential threat. What Palestinians want is to see their children grow with no agony and no death, refusing that the only horizon that is available to them is the shroud of death or the shackles of oppression. There are still some who wonder very publicly if we do even exist, or recognize our right to existence simply to justify killing us. There are still some to wonder if we are entitled to find life and freedom in our land. There are still some who treat us as a burden, as expendable, as parasites, as a people too many, as having deserved to be killed and maimed. That dehumanization, that denial of our rights, that demonization of Palestinians reached its ultimate expression in Gaza, where the genocide continues as we speak and meet again and again and again. And while the whole world stands with Gaza, and we recognize this solidarity in all of your countries that we see every day, Gaza stands alone. And Gaza will continue standing alone for as long as the genocide continues. The decisions to hold those responsible accountable, to deter the continued commission of crimes, to ensure the killing stops and aid flows in a dignified manner throughout the Gaza Strip, cannot be deferred any longer. Every day, 100 Palestinian civilians are killed. Every single day, 100 Palestinians are killed in tents, in the streets, and while trying to provide food for their families. They are bombed, shot at, confronted with occupation-made famine and occupation-made thirst as weapons of war, and the obliteration of all the requirements of life in Gaza, from homes to hospitals, as their lives and their limbs are taken away day after day after day. And now aid is being used to torment our people, to squeeze them in 16% of the Gaza Strip. Gaza was the most densely populated area on earth, with over 2 million people living in the Gaza Strip. They now are squeezed on 16% of that area, to render them more desperate, to force them to leave their land. We are no different than the nations represented here. who achieved their independence and took their rightful place among the community of nations. We are entitled to life. We are entitled to freedom. We are entitled to security. And we are entitled to our independent state. There is something unbearable and honestly a bit humiliating about having to proclaim over and over again that we are part of humanity and that we should be treated as human beings. Palestinians were not born to live their lives under foreign occupation or to endure repeatedly death and destruction, displacement and dispossession. That is not our fate. We are no lesser beings than those who claim these rights for themselves around the world and across history, who proclaim this self-evident truth that all people are created and remain equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and dignity. For those who contest our right to our independent state in our land, what are they proposing? A one-state solution between the river and the sea, with equal rights for all, with everyone enjoying the right to vote and able to exercise their political and human rights? I doubt that's their intention, given the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So what are they proposing? There are only three options left: genocide, ethnic cleansing, or apartheid, or a combination of all three. The destruction and removal of a nation by force, or the continued subjugation of a people. This is horrible and unacceptable, and it is what we are witnessing before our very eyes. There should be consensus against these criminal options. But when it comes to the Palestinian people, it is better to check. We have an experience when it comes to us to see people justify the unjustifiable. Therefore, there is no viable solution without an independent and sovereign state of Palestine, with East Jerusalem as its capital, living side by side with Israel in peace and security. We are not saying that while there is calm, while our people are thriving and living their lives, we are still speaking of the two-state solution, living side by side with Israel while the Israeli government is attempting to annihilate our nation. The two-state solution on the 1967 borders, the world rallied around and demanded the parties to accept. One does. What about the other? In a two-state solution, there are no negotiations, no debate, no conditions over the existence of either state. Neither side has a veto right over the existence of the other. That is the premise of that solution. Palestine recognized Israel over 30 years ago and still awaits Israel's recognition of Palestine. Israel demands that we recognize not only its existence, but its right to exist. Something specific to Israel, its right to exist. While it arrogates to itself the right to veto our state and deny our very existence as a nation. In fact, Israel not only claims this veto right over Palestinian statehood, or raises condition after condition to make it impossible, it actively pursues the destruction of that state and the displacement of our people. Some suggest that the solution would be for Palestinian statehood to be adjusted to accommodate Israel's illegal actions, effectively ensuring the perpetuation of the occupation instead of ending it. You know what a state is. Sovereignty is a corollary of statehood. They are inextricably linked. Independence is freedom from foreign occupation and domination in all its manifestations. And we are entitled to sovereignty and security too. Madam President, Netanyahu held a map in the General Assembly in September 2023 about his vision for the new Middle East. In that map, Palestine had disappeared altogether. Israel, from the river to the sea, not a slogan as the one that upsets Israel so much, a reality that its occupation forces, its bulldozers, its settlers, its settlements are trying to build through violence. On the ground, every day there is a new massacre. Palestinian cities and towns look like an archipelago in an ocean of Israeli settlements, enclosed military zones, as communities are confronted with a shrinking space delineated by occupation forces and settlers' attacks, by illegal military orders and illegitimate measures, as if they were drowning under this constant violence and pressure. From Masafir Yatta to Kafr Malik, to Taibe and Der Dibwan, from Jerusalem to Jenin, from Nablus and Tul Karam, from Tubas to Bethlehem and Al Khalil. Everywhere, Palestinians confined, fragmented, suffocating under this occupation. Under the pretext of ensuring the security of the occupying power, Israel is threatening the very survival of the occupied people. The only way forward is ending the occupation and the violence once and for all. Palestine is committed to nonviolence in words and deeds. It condemned attacks against all civilians without distinction, Palestinians and Israelis. It reaffirmed its commitment to the two-state solution on the basis of the relevant UN resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. It was ready to cooperate fully and still is with the International Conference on the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France. And it started by spelling out its commitments in a letter of President Abbas to President Macron and to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And we are acting upon these commitments. But we also have rights that need to be upheld, and that is what the letter affirmed as well. We implemented reforms exceeding expectations in impossible circumstances. You know, we are asked to do a lot, and we are saying we are ready to assume all our responsibilities, including in the Gaza Strip, to ensure sole governance and security responsibilities, to have a monopoly over governance and weapons. And we are being denied our ability to do that, to deliver to our people by Israel. You have to help us get rid of the shockhold that Israel has over us, politically, militarily, physically, and financially. Imagine a government that would have to deal with daily incursions by a foreign force, by forces and settlers, into their towns and cities, day after day. Imagine if your resources were being stolen, your natural resources and your money. Israel is withholding $2.3 billion of Palestinian revenues. That means that we have been unable to pay to most of our public employees the equivalent of several months of salaries. Imagine in your countries if you didn't pay for 1 month the salaries of your public employees, what would happen? You know what Palestinian civil servants are doing? They are showing up, despite that, to deliver to their people. We are doing the impossible, in impossible circumstances, and Israel wants to make sure we fail. It will eventually regret it if it was to succeed. But you have a duty to ensure we do not fail. We succeed for the Palestinian people and their rights, but also for the prospects of peace in our region. We accepted every international mechanism, every verification. We ask you to come and check that we are upholding our obligations, as long as you are ready to check in parallel that Israel is upholding its obligations. We have called for the deployment of forces to ensure a ceasefire is respected under a UN mandate and upon the invitation of the Palestinian side, to protect the Palestinian people and to ensure the security for all, with regional and international forces. There is a plan. There is a plan today, an Arab OIC plan supported by the whole world that would allow to bring this situation to an end, to start the recovery process in Gaza, to rebuild Gaza while the Palestinians remain in it. Israel is undermining all these efforts, the international efforts, the regional efforts, the Palestinian efforts. None of these decisions we are making are easy, especially when Israel is sparing no effort to destroy our state and to harm our people. I urge you not to take us for granted, not to take these decisions for granted. I urge you to help us demonstrate to our people that there is a peaceful path to liberation. If they lose that hope, you cannot imagine the reverberations. We need to demonstrate that there's a peaceful path to liberation. Israel wants to convince them that there's no path to liberation because it believes they will then disappear, either by being killed or being displaced. That is a horrible bet, that is an inhumane bet, and that is a crazy bet that endangers the security of everyone. And it cannot be allowed to continue. Calls for ending the killing in Gaza, ending colonization, upholding international law and the relevant UN resolutions must be accompanied by actions that allow the achievements of these goals, including in line with the determination of the International Court of Justice. We are asked to restate and prove every single day our commitment to nonviolence and the two-state solution, while the other side is unleashing brutal violence against our people and is destroying the two-state solution. There is nothing that will allow to justify the double standards of demanding Palestinian pacifism while justifying, fueling, or even tolerating Israeli militarism. That is not the way forward. There's always a way to justify violence. But the only way forward for the benefit of all is to break the cycle of violence. There's a Palestinian leader from Jerusalem who was an icon of the non-violent Palestinian struggle called Faisal al-Husseini. And in an attempt to convince the people of why the non-violence way was the right way, he used a metaphor. He said, I can challenge Muhammad Ali Clay or Mike Tyson and defeat him, but not in a boxing ring, around a chess set. And this image, which had an impact on me and many Palestinians, made sense, made a lot of sense. However, imagine what would happen if you sit around that chess set and you're on the verge of winning, achieving liberation, and Mike Tyson would stand up and knock out Faisal al-Husseini. And Faisal al-Husseini would rise, as he has done in real life, after being beaten time and time again in Jerusalem, in the streets of Jerusalem, and would put the chess set forward and say, let's try again. And as soon as he was going to win, Mike Tyson would rise again and knock him out again. Don't you think that some of the people observing this scene would say, why doesn't he swing at him? Even if it sounds crazy given the asymmetry of power. But there's one way to prove that Faisal al-Husseini is right, by upholding the rules, by preventing that violence from taking place, by not allowing one side to knock out the other side, time and time again. That is the way that we preserve life. That is the way that you ensure security. There's no Israeli security at the expense of Palestinian life and Palestinian rights. There is shared security, shared life. And the sad reality is, as part of this dehumanization of Palestinians, is once the slaughter is over, and it has to be over, there's an expectation that Palestinians should move on, regardless of the lives lost, of the limbs lost, of the loved ones lost, regardless that their lives were turned into ruins, that every inch of Gaza has witnessed tragedies and methodic devastation. there's an expectation that parents will walk the earth with the shadow of their killed children and do nothing about it. The children who were orphaned will hold on to the memory of their parents, but not to the anger over how they were killed. There's an expectation that a nation will be able to move on from the reality of parents carrying their children in plastic bags, of families buried under the rubble or the sand, or in the tents they found shelter in after everything else was destroyed. That we will be able to move on as a nation from the images of burning children, of starving infants, of the impact that bombs left behind on the lives of many Palestinians, on their scarred bodies, in their hearts and minds, of the impact that a single bullet lodged in the child's head or heart has over an entire family forever. We said long ago we made a choice to seek justice, not vengeance. Justice, not vengeance. But we cannot be prevented from seeking either. We cannot continue to be denied our right to life, to liberty, to dignity. We cannot be denied recourse and reparation. No one has a rightful claim to supremacy, to exceptionalism, to domination, to oppression. No one. Justice is the only way forward and the only viable path to peace. And we are still pursuing peace, despite everything that was done to us. How many times have we heard the claim that the Middle East was one war away from peace, only as a prelude to another war and another war? How many times did we hear the claim that the Palestinian question no longer mattered or was finally put to rest? No one should succumb to these lies and illusions any longer. They cost lives, and we have already lost way too many lives. A different reality is possible for Palestine, for Israel, and for the region. A reality of shared peace, security, and prosperity. It starts with ending the genocide, releasing hostages and prisoners, delivering humanitarian aid, and the full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. It starts from putting an end to the annexation of our land and the displacement of our people. And it will materialize with the independence of the state of Palestine. Shared security will be achieved by the fulfillment of our inalienable rights, not their continued denial. There is not a people too many in the Middle East. There is an independent state missing. We ask for nothing more than what international law has determined as our rights, at par with other peoples around the world, but we will accept nothing less. Our freedom can no longer be denied or delayed. And I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Observer State of Palestine for the statement. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement, and I now give him the floor.
Thank you again, Madam President. Accusations of genocide are categorically false here and fuel anti-Semitism around the world. America fully supports Israel's right to defend itself. Israel has taken numerous measures to limit harm to civilians and to address humanitarian needs. The loss of civilian life in Gaza is tragic, but the responsibility for this rests with Hamas, which could stop the fighting today by freeing the hostages and agreeing to the ceasefire terms already accepted by Israel. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United States for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank ASG Chiari for his briefing. Madam President, Jonathan Samerano's parents had prayed every day for a miracle. Instead, last week, we received the cold confirmation of tragedy. The IDF recovered Jonathan's body in Gaza. He was just 21, abducted on October 7 by an UNRWA employee, a terrorist who received his salary from the UN. The United Nations paid the wages of the man who stole Jonathan's body and dragged him into Gaza. Where are the condolences of the Secretary General? Where is even an apology from Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini? Their silence rings louder than any empty statement they have ever offered. No one in this building can claim ignorance. No one can hide behind the excuse of not knowing, because Yonatan's mother, Ayelet Samerano, came here many times to this very building and looked Commissioner Lazzarini in the eyes. We demanded accountability. We demanded answers. We reminded him that the UN badge must not be a shield for terrorists. No reply till today. Now, last week, Ayelet has buried her son while the UN buries its head in the sand. This stain will never wash out. Colleagues, as ancient Rome faced a brutal and unrelenting enemy, Cato the Elder would end every speech with the same words. Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. In every speech I come here, I give you the same phrase. I don't call for destruction. I don't call for vengeance. No, I ask for something far more simple, far more human. And I tell you that every week almost. Bring them home. Very simple. You all spoke about what you expect, humanitarian, ceasefire, release of hostages. It's otherwise. It starts with the release of the hostages. Then you can speak about the rest. Bring them home. All of them. Before all else. This must happen. The hostages must be released. The war will not end with anyone remaining in Gaza. It will not happen. The same moral blindness that failed Ayelet Samerano and continues to fail the hostages now threatens the one initiative that is actually feeding Gaza's civilians, the GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. In a single month, the GHF has delivered more than 46 million meals, distributed directly to Palestinian families from 3 secure distribution sites. The speed and efficiency are rapidly increasing, with over 2 million meals delivered in a single day. They have bypassed the terrorists who loot the aid, making a profit or diverting it to Hamas's murderous objectives. The GHF has offered the United Nations full data sharing, joint logistics, and transparent monitoring. What has the response been from the Secretary General and other officials? And we heard it today. Indifference, defamation, and obstruction. 3 weeks ago, Hamas terrorists murdered clearly identified GHF staff as they were returning from a day of feeding Gazan civilians. Horrible pictures. They stopped the bus, tortured them in the middle of the road, and executed them. The Secretary General said nothing. OCHA, nothing. UNRWA, nothing. Silence in the face of murder is not impartiality, it is abandonment. Meanwhile, some offices here have circulated anonymous so-called briefings smearing the JHF model. They spread disinformation that Hamas weaponized to justify more attacks on aid workers. Outrageously, the UN has also embellished and promoted false allegations against the GHF about violent incidents, shamelessly promoting claims made by Hamas-controlled sources. The blindness and hatred have now exploded into absurdity, with some actors even promoting the insane conspiracy that the aid being distributed contains drugs. As if the people risking their lives to feed families are secretly pushing narcotics. It's delusional. I don't get it. Why not to cooperate? Why not to work together? So let us speak plainly. If you truly care about Gaza's children, stop sabotaging the only program that reaches them instead of terrorists. Condemn the murderers. Partner with the people delivering bread, not with the people burning it. Get out of your own way and get out of the way of those trying to help. Set aside the bureaucracy, the political calculations, and the misguided need to preserve broken systems. The GHF is not interested in press releases or technical victories. It is interested in improving the humanitarian situation. If you care about the people of Gaza, stop with the defamation and the lies and help the people of Gaza. Madam President, while the UN struggled to regain its moral clarity, Israel acted with ours. During Operation Rising Lion, the IDF achieved full air superiority over western Iran and even Tehran, striking nuclear complexes, airfields, and ballistic missile sites. We neutralized more than half of Iran's ballistic missile launchers that threatened Israel and the entire world. We destroyed over 1,000 UAVs and intercepted roughly 90% of the missiles that were fired at our cities. Not a single Israeli aircraft was lost. We targeted the regime's war machine, not its people. This is another moral line Iran will never respect, as they intentionally fired its missiles at our population centers, murdering 28 civilians. Tehran's terror does not stop at Iran's borders. Its money, weapons, and its orders flow straight into Judea and Samaria. In May of this year, Hananel and Tseela Gez, age 37, were driving to the hospital to welcome their baby into the world. Tseela was 9 months pregnant. It was meant to be the happiest day of their lives. Instead, as they drove down the road at night on the way to the hospital, a terrorist opened fire on their car. Tseela was murdered, so was their unborn child. A family destroyed, 3 children left without a mother, a life stolen before it even started. The rifles and ammunition that find their way into the hands of terrorists such as this one come directly from the IRGC's supply chain of death and terror. We will never again allow our families to be hunted. The pattern is unmistakable. Iran funds Hamas to massacre our people, Hezbollah to fire rockets at our cities, the Houthis to hijack shipping lanes and launch ballistic missiles, terror cells in Judea and Samaria in order to ambush innocent civilians on their way to give birth. Israel will continue to sever those Iranian supply lines, whether they run into Gaza or to Jenin. Colleagues, alongside the darkness, a different future is already taking shape, a future of cooperation, a future of peace. That vision was laid out in the Abraham Accords, and Israel remains committed to expanding that circle of partnership and normalization. Across the region, nations are choosing a path not defined by old hatred, but by shared interest and common hope. That path is open to all who seek it. We believe in a peaceful Middle East, one built not on terror tunnels and ballistic missiles, but on innovation, dialogue, and mutual respect. We will continue working with all those who share that belief and wish to see a brighter future. We have seen what this region looks like when it chooses war. We have also seen what it can become when it chooses peace. Israel will never stop defending its people, but we will also never stop our desire to reach out and achieve peace. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. I now invite council members to informal consultations. The representative of the Observer State of Palestine has requested the floor for a further statement. I give him the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wonder if that peaceful settlement for the Middle East includes the independent and sovereign state of Palestine, or again, based on the illusion that somehow there is a way to destroy the Palestinian people rather than recognize and implement its rights. We have declared very clearly that we are willing to cooperate and work closely with President Trump and the U.S. administration, with Saudi Arabia and Arab and Muslim countries, with European and global partners to achieve peace, true and genuine peace, just and lasting peace. Let us not distort the meaning of the word. And there is no peace without justice and without upholding international law. There is no peace at the expense of international law and people's lives and rights. It is true there was a complete blockade over humanitarian aid and starvation used as a weapon of war, and now there is aid being distributed. And the question is, how can you complain? We can complain because while the first one was unacceptable, inhumane, and unbearable, and that was an official decision of the Israeli government to block that humanitarian aid for so long and to create the conditions of famine in Gaza, it doesn't mean that anything else is also acceptable. Should we not believe our eyes? Is there anyone here who's not seeing the images of thousands of people trying to get aid and getting shot at, of people being killed every day? It's not a conspiracy or an imaginary narrative. These are images that we see every day. And we've called several times to allow international journalists in and to allow investigation missions in, international investigation mission in, to tell us what is happening if we are to believe that everything we're seeing is not true. Our people are being treated as cattle. They're being shot at like animals. These are human beings. We shouldn't believe the testimonies of Israeli soldiers saying they were ordered to shoot at the people coming to collect aid while they had no weapons, while they were not an enemy. What if these people that you saw on your TVs every night and every day were Israelis, starving, trying to get aid? What would happen? Every day, 30 Palestinians killed, trying to get aid. So yes, aid needs to be distributed, but needs to be distributed in a dignified manner to all Palestinians, not as a means to forcibly displace them, squeeze them into part of the territory, make them desperate, further humiliate them. We ask to be treated as human beings. That's not too much to ask. And it is a bit insulting to suggest that we are not entitled to be treated that way, that we should take whatever is thrown our way and be thankful. Speaking about attacks on aid workers, you want to go there? Attacks on aid workers, humanitarian personnel, UN staff? Attacks on aid workers? You spoke
Colleagues,
of, you spoke
colleagues,
of Hamas and
I just wish to remind that the decorum of the Council be kept and that we refrain from any personal attacks or even crosstalk.
Point taken,
go
Madam
ahead.
President. We've seen attacks on humanitarian workers, on the UN staff. We've seen the narrative that Palestinians are bloodthirsty monsters and that the UN was part of a terrorism network. And that narrative and that incitement led to real-life consequences of occupation forces killing entire families and children and attacking the UN and killing them and detaining them and torturing them. This should be taken seriously. Hamas is responsible for the actions it takes. And we have been very clear in our position on every matter, whether it is on the attacks on civilians or the taking of hostages. We reject and oppose these actions. But Israel is responsible for its actions. Israel is also responsible for its actions. It cannot defer that responsibility or deny that responsibility. It's about releasing the hostages, massively bombing entire neighborhoods, destroying homes, whether empty or people still in them, bombing the tents of people, shooting snipers, shooting bullets in the heads of children. They were in the search of hostages while doing that. Doctor after doctor coming here to explain what is being done to the Palestinians, denying them the right to life, denying them access to hospitals, denying them access to schools, destroying their lives. That was about the release of the hostages. Or pretending that nobody cared about the hostages here, when there was legislation upon legislation on this issue, but in parallel to calling for the end of killing of Palestinians, of displacement of Palestinians, of arbitrary arrest of Palestinians. But you cannot tolerate the fact that the Palestinians are people, that they are human beings, and that they are entitled to the equal measure of rights. So it is not about them. A ceasefire would be the best way to end the bloodshed, to release the hostages, and to finally embark on a path to end the occupation. And I want to be very clear, when we speak of genocide, in no way do we hold Jews around the world responsible for Israel's actions. These are legal determinations. These are crimes that have a definition. If I say Israel commits war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide, nobody can answer that we are fueling anti-Semitism, except those who have a confusion between the acts of the Israeli government and the Jews around the world. And that's an unacceptable confusion. We will never go there. Those responsible are those doing the act. And you cannot say that they are responsible because of their identity, nor you can say they are innocent based on their identity. The identity of the perpetrators and the identity of the victims is not relevant here. It is the actions that are being committed. And we can have a legal debate over the qualification of genocide, despite the overwhelming conclusion reached by many legal experts around the world and many organizations around the world that are extremely credible. I think it's more important to focus on ending the killing. But it is not acceptable to use Jewish people or the Holocaust as a shield from holding Israel accountable for the commission of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. It is irresponsible to do that. It is unacceptable to do that. We believe in international law, all of international law, nothing but international law. We hold ourselves accountable based on that standard. Israel cannot invent its own standard. The same rules apply to all of us. And everyone who breaches these rules should be held accountable. I think enough Palestinians' lives have been lost to finally reach that conclusion. There is nothing that justifies massacres. Nothing. You cannot say my right to security, you cannot say my right to existence, you cannot use big words to hide behind them and justify massacres. We want shared life, 2 states, Palestine and Israel. We are very clear. And I wish we could have that clarity from the other side. 2 states, Palestine and Israel. Israel has been a member of the United Nations for 75 years now. We are still waiting for our turn. And how can we explain that we are still waiting for our turn? How can we explain that our people are still not free all these years? That they have to fulfill a threshold, reach a threshold that no other country around the earth has been asked to meet. The same rules for everyone, a right to life for everyone, a right to security for everyone, a right to freedom for everyone, respect for human dignity for everyone. Speaking of human shields, to explain mass bombing of people, shooting randomly at people, when Israel itself, the latest UN report shows, has used boys in Gaza and the West Bank, Palestinian boys, as human shields in its military operations. That's the problem, when you think that what you do is acceptable because you are the one doing it. No, the same actions should bring the same level of condemnation and the same clarity. All these people abducted from Gaza that disappeared, including doctors, including children, that would be acceptable? And we call on the Israeli people not to believe the narrative of its government that the whole world is conspiring against them. We are truly extending our hand in peace to end the violence, but we need to end the occupation. We need freedom and justice so all can coexist in our region. That is the new Middle East we all need and aspire to. That is the right Middle East that we need to see. One where no existence is denied, one where nobody's freedom is denied, one where nobody's security is denied, one where we can share in life and peace and prosperity. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Observer State of Palestine for his statement. The representative of Israel has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give him the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The representative of Palestine spoke for so long, but at your speech, you forgot to mention the responsibility of Hamas. Why are you afraid from Hamas? I will not answer all your lies. I will ask you one question. Can you agree with me and with my colleagues that there is no future for Gaza with Hamas in Gaza? Can you agree on this sentence, that the future of Gaza will not include Hamas? If you say yes, we can talk about everything. You blame us and we blame you. That's the core of the conflict. We don't want to destroy the Palestinian people. We are not fighting the Palestinian people. We are fighting Hamas, the terrorist organization who brought you to where you are today. So if you claim that you represent the Palestinian people, be responsible, be brave, and agree with me today that the future of Gaza will not include Hamas.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement, and the representative of the Observer State of Palestine has asked for the floor to make a further statement, and I give him the floor, and this will be our last statement in the meeting.
Thank you, Madam President. I wonder if this is not you attempting to destroy Palestine, what it is. We heard that you are taking all the precautions not to harm civilians. I can only imagine what it would be if you were not taking these precautions. You've asked, it so happens we're not in an Israeli interrogation or an Israeli jail. I have said, but you have decided not to hear, and I'm sorry, Madam President, to address the person directly since the representative of Israel addressed me. We have said that we do not accept and reject all attacks against civilians. We have said that we are willing to take our responsibilities in governance and security in Gaza tomorrow. Sole responsibility. That means there's no Hamas ruling in Gaza. That means there's no weapons there except in the hands of the Palestinian official government. We have a policy of one state, one law, one gun, one government. But you are undermining that Palestinian government who wants peace. You are preventing that from happening. The more we delay the ceasefire, the more killing there is. Instead of arriving to that solution proposed by Palestine, the region, and the world, to have a Palestinian government operating in Gaza with regional international support, with the deployment of forces upon our invitation, you are denying that state. And there's always a reason. It's Hamas, it's this, it's that, it's you didn't say this or you should do that. Look at everything we have done and everything we have said and tell me where Israel has done anything that matches the level of commitment we have shown. Your Knesset is voting against the Palestinian state. Your officers are destroying it on the ground. You can claim you're not trying to destroy it, but again, people have eyes. Does Israel recognize the state of Palestine? Say it. Then that would be an important meeting. We would finally have achieved a breakthrough that you believe in a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel. So there are solutions to all the problems as long as we are finally in a context where our rights are recognized, where both sides' security can be guaranteed. Israel claims a right to do anything under the pretext of security. That is not possible. No other state could behave this way. So I think we've been clear. We cannot be clearer. There is a solution today, but nothing justifies what you have done in Gaza. Nothing justifies what you have done in Gaza. If we had tried to justify the killing of Israeli civilians, nobody in the world would have accepted it, under any reason and under any claim or any right. Therefore, your systematic killing of Palestinian civilians can never be justified. We are not lesser human beings. We are not expendable. And then the UN reports are wrong, the human rights organizations are wrong, the journalists are wrong, the governments around the world are wrong, your closest allies are wrong. Or maybe you are wrong, maybe you are lying, maybe you are distorting realities to serve the policy. The permanent representative of Israel wrote about the importance of the voluntary migration of Palestinians, the code name for ethnic cleansing in Gaza. We want to live in freedom and dignity in our land. That is our right. And we are willing to do so within the two-state solution. Within the two-state solution. And it is time for Israel to stop destroying that solution. For the benefit of Palestinians, for the benefit of Israelis, for the benefit of the region, and for the benefit of the world.
Representative of the Observer State of Palestine for his statement. And I now invite Council members to informal consultations to continue our discussions on the subject. The meeting is adjourned.